Mr. President, I rise to strongly oppose this legislation concerning a waiver for General Mattis. I know that all of my colleagues in the Armed Services Committee, who just left a hearing on this very topic with General Mattis, and this entire body, take the oversight role of our committee very seriously. We take civilian control of the military as a fundamental Founding Fathers' constitutional principle. I mean, even George Washington put aside his commission 5 years before he became our commander-in-chief and became the President of the United States. When Congress in 1947 debated the National Security Act to create the Department of Defense and create the Secretary of Defense, they decided to imbue this idea of civilian control into the Secretary of Defense by law, by mandating he had to be separated from the military at least 10 years before taking on the role of Secretary of Defense, enshrining again this notion that civilian control is so important to our democracy and our American values. On Tuesday, the Armed Services Committee had a very compelling hearing where we had two experts testify for the reasons for civilian control and why they are still so important today. The importance of having a Secretary of Defense who brings a civilian perspective to this position brings with him or her a breadth of views and experience. And those views coming from a civilian are very important. Second, they said it's really important not to politicize our officer ranks, meaning our senior top military advisors jockeying for the next job as a political appointee. That undermines the functioning of the military, and they testified to countries where it has had such deleterious effects. The third reason is concern about bias towards one service or the other. So arguably, if you come from one service, you may have preferences innately for that service, which could undermine the strength of our military. And the fourth reason, which is really important in today's world, is the desire to model civilian control for other countries around the world that are struggling to become more democratic, less autocratic, less military run. And so those are the reasons given. Those are the four reasons given why civilian control of the military is so important. Now, Dr. Cohn and Dr. Hicks both agreed, despite those four reasons, from their perspective, it should be abrogated. Dr. Cohen said it was because of the characteristics of this incoming administration that gave him such concern that he needed to have someone like General Mattis, and thought the qualities of General Mattis were important. And even Dr. Hicks said it was the qualities of General Mattis that were so unique and important. But she very importantly said, never, though, should we say that it's time for a general to lead the to be the Secretary of Defense. In her perspective, it should never be that you need a general. So not exigencies of circumstances. For her, it was specific characteristics of Mattis. Now, overwhelmingly, the senators and the members of the Armed Services Committee, me included, have expressed enormous gratitude for the extraordinary service of General Mattis. That is not in debate. But if there is no civilian in all the world, as of today, at this moment, who could meet the needs of the incoming administration, then who is to say that there will be no civilian in the future who can meet the needs of this administration, should they need another Secretary of Defense, or the next administration? So what we are doing today, inadvertently, because of the cherished notion we have towards this one nominee, is that we are subverting the standard. And in fact, this exception now can swallow the whole rule. If you're literally saying an exception can be made because of the nature of an administration and the nature of a nominee, you've literally swallowed the rule. I think it's a historic mistake. I truly believe we are about to unwind something that has so served this country well for the past 50 years. We are about to unwind it. And interestingly, the last time the Congress unwound it, they said never again. They didn't say, if you have an urgency like we have now, which was the concern, according to these experts, that World War III was looming, the concern that we needed a well-known, well-loved general because of all the foreign policy worries of the moment with North Korea. They said never again. So I don't know why we're here. I really don't know why, because it's not the standard. Now, this is the world we're going to live in. President-elect Trump will mainly now have his foreign policy input from 2 4-star generals and a 3-star general. So where's the divergence, the diversity of opinion coming from? Where's that balance going to come from? The number one reason the experts gave why you have civilian control of the military. Tillerson? Even General Marshall, if we remember history correctly, he had the experience of being a former Secretary of State and head of the Red Cross. So he brought with him civilian experience in addition to his military experience. So again, civilian control has very important constitutional reasons based on our democratic values, the balance of power, and how our democracy runs. Those principles are being gutted and ignored. So we are not using the right standards, and I think it's a historic mistake. Now, as I've said before, this has nothing to do with our particular nominee. These principles exist for a reason, and it's enabled our country's success for decades and has kept our democracy safe. And if we take this change in our laws so lightly as we are about to do today, that when future Congress look at this and want to make the same exception, or even this same Congress 2 or 3 years from now, it will be much easier to do. So I will continue to oppose this waiver for any nominee who is not a civilian or has not met the waiting period that is required by law. And I urge all of my colleagues to do the same. I urge them to vote no. With that, I suggest an absence of a quorum.